It started with a scream, then silence. On a blistering July afternoon in the heart of Charleston, South Carolina, the air was thick with heat and worry. The sound of sirens tore through the stillness like a jagged knife. At Riverbend Park, parents clutched their children tighter while whispers turned into sobs. 12-year-old Mason Clark had vanished, one moment tossing a football by the playground, the next gone without a trace. His mother, Rachel, collapsed onto the sidewalk, her cries echoing through the crowd. It felt hauntingly familiar. Just months earlier, the city had buried a nightmare when Caleb Ward, a local mechanic, was convicted of abducting young Ellie Harper. But if Caleb was locked up, how could this be happening again? And that's where it gets chilling. Because what comes next? It shatters everything we think we know about guilt, justice, and the monsters hiding in plain sight. Stick around. What we uncover will leave you questioning every closed case you've ever trusted. Everyone thought the nightmare was over until it wasn't. The arrest of Caleb Ward had brought a temporary calm to Charleston's worried parents. A small-town mechanic with a quiet demeanor and a shady alibi, he was convicted swiftly. The fingerprints, the duct tape with his DNA, the abandoned house where little Ellie Harper was found, barely breathing. The city exhaled. Justice was served, or so we believed. But something about the case always gnawed at Detective Marshall Blake, a seasoned FBI profiler who'd seen the worst America had to offer. There was a hollowness in Ward's history. No digital footprint of predatory behavior. No signs of escalating violence, no record. Just a quiet man with a broken-down truck and a bad reputation. And now, with Mason Clark missing, under nearly identical circumstances, Marshall's gut told him what no one wanted to hear. They had convicted the wrong man. The system had tied a bow on the case too neatly, too quickly, and while the city had slept easy these past few months, someone else had been watching and waiting. Even Mason's disappearance followed a twisted pattern. No ransom, no leads. Just a small blue cap found near the edge of the woods and Rex, the department's elite canine, growling at an abandoned tool shed, teeth bared and fur standing on end. That dog had found Ellie. Now he was pointing again. But this time, it wasn't just about finding a boy. It was about unraveling a conspiracy buried deeper than anyone dared imagine. And what Detective Blake finds next will shake Charleston to its very core. There was something about that case that never sat right. And now, I know why. Detective Marshall Blake had spent years hunting down monsters in the darkest corners of America. But nothing, not even the chilling cases of human trafficking or murder he'd faced before, had prepared him for the truth lurking beneath Caleb Ward's conviction. Sure, the evidence had seemed undeniable. The bloody fingerprints, the DNA, the abandoned house where Ellie Harper had been found, barely alive, chained to the wall. Ward had been an open and shut case, or so the public believed, but Blake's instincts had never fully trusted it. There was something too clean about it, too easy. And when Mason Clark went missing just like Ellie, in the same park, playing the same games at the same time of day, Blake couldn't shake the feeling that history was repeating itself. Only this time, the monster wasn't in a jail cell. It was still out there, lurking. As the investigation unfolded, Blake uncovered unsettling truths. Caleb Ward had been receiving odd wire transfers, sometimes as much as $100,000 at a time, and not from any legitimate source. No, these payments came from a shell corporation with ties to the Serpents, a criminal syndicate known for their ties to human trafficking. He had been a cog in a much larger, more sinister operation. Ward was never the mastermind. He was a pawn. But now the question wasn't about Caleb Ward anymore. It was about who was still pulling the strings, and how many more children had vanished without anyone noticing. As Blake walked through the darkened alleys of Charleston, Rex, the K-9 officer, growled low under his breath. The dog was picking up something Blake couldn't see, but he could feel it, the deep, gnawing pull of a much larger web. The hunt wasn't over. It was just beginning, and every second counted. It wasn't just a case, it was a warning. Detective Marshall Blake had never been much of a dog person, but there was something about Rex, the K-9 officer, that made his skin crawl. The German Shepherd had saved lives, uncovered hidden truths, and always seemed to know things Blake couldn't explain. As Blake followed Rex down the foggy streets of Charleston, the dog's instincts were razor sharp, leading him to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The closer they got, the more Blake could feel something in the air, a tension, a pull, as if something was waiting. Rex's growl cut through the silence like a knife. Blake's hand instinctively reached for his sidearm. The building was old, its metal walls rusted and forgotten, but inside it was alive with something more than just decay. Blake's flashlight swept over the dusty floor, revealing a set of small, child-sized footprints. His heart skipped. These weren't just old prints. They were fresh, recent. The warehouse was a dead end. At least that's what Blake had thought until the rusted door creaked open. Inside, it wasn't just the remnants of an abandoned building. It was a crime scene waiting to be uncovered. Files, photos, names, dates. The missing children from Charleston, their faces, their lives, their stories, were all here, neatly documented with one chilling detail, a list of names that had been crossed out. Blake's pulse raced. They're still out there, and they're hunting. The hunt had just taken a darker turn. The real monster wasn't hiding in prison. It was lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting. There are moments when everything falls into place, and then the truth hits you like a freight train. Detective Marshall Blake had never believed in coincidences, especially not when it came to missing children. But as he walked the dark alley behind the warehouse, his mind reeled. The evidence was piling up piece by piece, and every thread was leading him to the same horrifying conclusion. Caleb Ward, the man convicted for the abduction of Ellie Harper, wasn't the mastermind. In fact, he was just a pawn, a puppet pulled by strings from somewhere much darker. The truth wasn't in Ward's actions, but in the hidden hand that had orchestrated it all, and they were still pulling the strings. Blake's thoughts were interrupted by Rex, the K-9 officer, whose hackles were raised, signaling danger. The dog's body stiffened as he moved toward the old weathered door of the warehouse. With a quick, practiced motion, Blake opened it. The musty air inside seemed to pulse with menace, like the very walls had secrets to keep. Then, on the dusty floor, he saw it, a set of fresh, child-sized footprints, leading deeper into the shadows. The pieces were falling into place. There had been other children, other lives torn apart, and someone had been keeping track. The files Blake found earlier weren't just records. They were a countdown. Names crossed out one by one, as if someone was keeping score. The hunt wasn't over. It was just getting started. Blake's gut twisted. The monsters hiding in the dark had been watching them the whole time, and they were still out there hunting. The truth always has a way of slipping through the cracks, but sometimes it doesn't stay hidden for long. As Detective Marshall Blake pieced together the wreckage of the case, one chilling thought gnawed at him. They had been chasing shadows. Caleb Ward wasn't the monster they'd been led to believe. He was a pawn, a face in the wrong place at the wrong time, caught in a web far too tangled for anyone to see. And now, the hunt wasn't just about solving a case. It was about uncovering the real monster, the one pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Blake had felt the shift the moment he discovered the money. Wire transfers, offshore accounts. And they weren't just going to Ward. They were coming from a shadowy corporation, one that had ties to the Serpents, a criminal syndicate that specialized in human trafficking, drugs, and much worse. Ward had been used. But who was pulling the strings? And why had no one connected the dots? Joseph Clean, a name from the past, resurfaced like a ghost. The more Blake dug, the clearer it became. Clean wasn't just a criminal, he was a mastermind. Blake had seen this type before, a manipulator, operating in the shadows, orchestrating chaos for power and profit. And just when Blake thought he had it figured out, the real twist hit. Clean wasn't alone. He was working with someone far more dangerous, someone whose reach extended into every corner of the city, unnoticed, hidden in plain sight. Now, the real question wasn't who took Mason Clark. It was who was behind it all, and how far they were willing to go to keep their secrets buried. The hunt was on, and it was personal. It was the kind of feeling you get when the storm is coming, and you know you're the only one who can see it. Detective Marshall Blake had spent his career chasing shadows, but nothing had ever felt as suffocating as this. The closer he got to the truth, the more everything around him seemed to collapse. Mason Clark's disappearance wasn't just another case. It was a link in a much larger chain of horror that had been ignored for far too long. The pieces Blake had uncovered, the wire transfers, the criminal syndicates, the hidden files, all pointed to one undeniable truth. The Serpents were still alive, and they were pulling the strings. And now, they were playing their most dangerous game yet. Blake's mind raced as he remembered the drawing Emily Carter had made. That sketch, the masked man, the tall figure standing in the doorway. It wasn't just a memory of the past. It was a warning. The monster she'd seen wasn't just Clean. No, there was someone else. Someone more powerful. Someone who had been hiding in plain sight. And now, Blake knew who it was. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. The very people they thought they'd locked away had been the distraction. The true mastermind was still out there, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Blake's stomach twisted with the grim understanding that the hunt was far from over. It had only just begun. Rex, his loyal K9 partner, let out a low growl, as if sensing the same danger. It wasn't just a case anymore. It was a race against time. And time was running out. One key lesson from this story is the importance of trusting your instincts, even when everything around you seems to fit neatly into place. In life, we often encounter situations where things appear resolved, but a nagging feeling suggests otherwise. Just as Detective Blake's gut feeling about the case kept him searching for the truth, we too must listen to our intuition when something feels wrong, no matter how convincing the surface may be. The story also reminds us that the truth is rarely simple. It's often hidden beneath layers, and sometimes we must dig deeper to uncover what truly matters.